This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Allison Cook, Super Inframan, and Stephen St. George. If you would like to help support the show, become a patron. WhereDidTheRoadGo.com. It's only $3 a month. Lots of extra content all month long. And now, our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have with me Super Inframan.
Hello, hello.
And Adam Sayne.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It has been a while, Adam.
It has been. It's good to be back with you, Seriah.
Have you been on since the conference?
No, I haven't. Last time I was on was when we did our little show together about all my Warren's research.
That's right. Yes, that was like September.
Yeah, September when we recorded it. I think you put it out like a couple of weeks before.
Yes,
we did the Strange Realities conference back in October. So
how are you? So how are you, Adam?
I'm good. Okay.
You
know, just worried about the world and the state of the world, but other than that, I'm okay.
And have you officially announced when the next Strange Realities will be?
On my show, yes, but okay. I'll say it here, and I'll probably say it again later on. But October 14th through the 16th is going to be the official date of the 2022 Strange Realities Conference.
Cool.
So tickets should be up shortly. I don't know when you're planning on putting this out, but I'm thinking in the next week or so, as we're recording this, I should have the tickets up for people to purchase, and looks like it's going to be the same price. We're going to do the $70 for in person and $30 for online. So,
all right, very cool.
Yeah, and I think that you'll be a part of it in some capacity. We were talking a little bit about that. So we will see, but we got pretty good lineup of people this year. So we're looking a little less speakers. Which will allow us to do a little more things, special things. So it's going to I think it'll be a good time.
All right.
And hopefully Mr. Inframan there will be able to join us this year.
I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully they won't cancel my flight the day of. The way they cancel it, I couldn't even rent a car and get there in time.
Yeah. That's true.
Why did they cancel your flight?
I think it was just an equipment issue or something like that. But it's one of those low cost air carriers, and so there was just no substitute for it unless I got in the car and drove.
Was that from the Ville Airport, or where was that from?
Yeah.
So I guess it's a pretty small airport, huh?
No, it's actually quite big, but they don't work with the other airlines. The one that does the local stuff. Yeah, they've got quite a lot of business traffic out of there.
Does Branson Air go through there?
Yes, it does. It does.
Well, you took a trip out west, Super Inframan, or Saxon, if we should call you that.
That works. It was one of those things where my wife needed a break, so we went out to New Mexico, and my wife is the coolest because she's down for all this stuff. We're doing normal touristy things, hanging out in Santa Fe and things like that. But we went and spent a few days in Roswell and sort of used that as a staging point to drive around different parts of New Mexico. And the wonderful thing about Roswell, the whole town embraces little green men and things like that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I found really interesting about Roswell, though, is when you go into some of the little kitschy museums and things like that, they're not strictly a nuts and bolts kind of thing, which I anticipated that they would be, especially when you have a crash that happened down the road from you. But, you would see things where there's art of like giant eyeballs floating over people and things like that. Not like everything was a typical gray or something, that we would normally see. It was like, and everybody was in on it. And there didn't seem to be like any dispute that people thought something happened or anything like that. Like everybody, it's just part of the culture around. But New Mexico as a whole is fascinating though, because, a 2-hour drive to be in New Mexico is not the same as a 2-hour drive in, like, say, New York State, where you are, Seriah.
Right.
Because it's open, flat road. There's no traffic. It's very easy to go between places. And so we went down to like Alamogordo, which is where the White Sands test range is, and the Trinity nuclear site is just a little north of that. And when you pull into the town, there are big signs that tell you this road during missile tests may be closed for up to 2 hours. And they put down barriers kind of like you would see it at a railroad crossing. And as you go around, you're like, oh, and then Los Alamos is over here. And you drive a little bit further, and then there's like the other extra airport outside of Roswell where they do all the servicing on different giant large aircraft and have military aircraft coming in and out of. And you realize, like, there are air bases or military installations or military adjacent facilities like all over the place dotting that state. And it makes it very easy to see this stuff and understand why so much mythology has come out of there. So we went down to Carlsbad, and Carlsbad Caverns is incredible. If you've never been there, they've got what they call the big room in the cave that is about the size of 6 or 7 football fields.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it just vast. And so, you see that, and then you start to understand why, people got traction with like underground bases in Dulce.
Right.
Because, just down the road, there are caverns that are, 6, 7 football fields wide that you can walk through, like, and walk in the mouth of, down into, and all over. And it's like, okay, this seems a lot more logical than it did to me before.
Yeah, a ton of caves. When I was down there with Rob, we went to Roswell, which I could talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, please do.
But we thought about going to Carlsbad, but it's like 100 miles away. That sounds like it was an interesting trip. Sounds like you kind of went all over the state.
Oh yeah, we definitely made the rounds, and after we did Carlsbad, I'm sort of a Billy the Kid buff, not a huge one, but I just kind of like some of the old Western folklore and things like that. So Lincoln is in along the drive back that we took, and Lincoln is where the Lincoln County Wars were, where Billy the Kid was part of the Regulators fighting over cattle with I think it was the Murphys and the McSweeneys.
Which, by the way, interesting thing about Roswell was that there's actually a monument or a statue to Pat Garrett there.
Oh, is there? I didn't see that.
Yeah, the one that killed Billy the Kid, or supposedly, if you believe the official story.
Right.
He actually was the sheriff of that county.
Okay. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. They've got his, to your point, supposedly, they've got his grave at Fort Sumter out there. We didn't make it over there, but my fun bit of synchronicity as we're getting to Lincoln, the town, which is where like all this stuff was focused around, where people were put in jail, where Billy was in jail before the governor came down and all these things. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the old hip hop song "Regulate" by Warren G and Nate Dogg, which opens with a quote from Young Guns about the Regulators. And we were probably about 10 minutes from the town, and my partner, she's just looked up things to do there on the phone as we're getting closer. And that song comes on the radio.
Oh.
And I had a moment where I was like, is that my phone playing it? No, it was on the satellite radio. And I guess they could program the stuff by, location or something, I suppose.
Yeah, but I don't think they do.
I don't think they do. And so as we're getting close to Lincoln, there's the quote from the beginning of the song where they explain what the Regulators are, all that stuff. And the song starts playing. And it was weird. It was freaky. Like, okay, that's not my phone. That's really happening. That is quite a bit of coincidence. And then the town itself, people still live there, but it's sort of a museum in and of itself where everything is preserved, and nobody was outside or anything. And this is a Sunday afternoon, so most of the stuff was closed. But that's sort of like set up to going into the town where there's that moment of synchronicity, and then getting there and it's just dead quiet. You start having like an Oz effect kind of feel. It was not a place where you felt like a lot of violence had happened, but there was definitely some weight in the air, if that makes sense, of, what happened there. And then it's sort of like, it felt like it wanted you to know, because obviously that song played when we were going into the town. So that was very cool, and then after that, of course, we went up to Santa Fe, and I actually thought Santa Fe would be a little bit more, not embrace the ufology, mythology or folklore or anything like that as much, but there are plenty of little green men statues around Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. We went to the Meow Wolf exhibit there, which I don't know are you guys familiar with Meow Wolf?
No.
Okay, so if any of the listeners, just Google Meow Wolf and look up the Santa Fe version. The Meow Wolf exhibit that's probably got the most popularity is one that's called Mega Mart in Las Vegas. In the Las Vegas one, when you walk in, it looks like a normal kind of like local grocery store thing, but as you go through, it gets weirder and stranger. And suddenly you open like a freezer door and it's like a portal to somewhere else. The Meow Wolf in Santa Fe is the closest I can think of walking into a high strangeness event that's simulated. You walk into the giant building. There's a house in front of you with grounds around it that are all recreated inside, so it looks like you're actually at this house. And you walk over to the mailbox, and you can use your phone to scan a QR code and go through their mail. And it starts talking about the head of the household experimenting with interdimensional devices and ways to go to other dimensions and bring people back to life and talk to the dead. And as you do that, you follow along with the story. You go into the house, and you can go through all their stuff, which makes it just freaky. But then you might open the washing machine, and there is a slide lit with stars that you go down. And then you're in all these rooms that make no sense, kind of like going through Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when they're riding the boat. Stuff like that. And so this whole exhibit is going into these weird spaces of art and bizarreness. Like, you go through one room in the kid's closet, and you walk out the other side, and there's a mammoth skeleton with crystals hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. Yeah.
Stuff that looks like it's from the Doctor Who set from, back in the 80s. I mean, it is trippy as can be.
It's crazy.
And, there's the little hints around about other dimensions merging. And then this whole area is a manifestation of everyone's emotions and subconscious being expressed. And I can't think of a better idea of how to explain or show somebody what co-creation might be like than that setup. And so that just made me think, of course this is in Santa Fe. Of course this is in New Mexico. That you would have this exhibit when you've got the history of Roswell, when you've got the, stories around deep underground bases and all of that, and portals and what have you.
Yeah, they fully embraced a lot of the mythology, it seems like.
Yeah. And I can't... Go ahead, Seriah.
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't know the name of this place, but I have actually seen this place before.
I thought you probably had. There are 4 exhibits, I think, in different places.
Yeah,
there's one in Denver and another in Las Vegas.
Okay. And they've all got a little bit of different initial setting. Like the one in Vegas, you go into it's like a grocery store. But this one, the fact that it was the house and you're going through someone's personal notes, and you can pick up the kids' homework And then, and the kid's written on the back of the page about something his granddad was doing. And it's sensical and nonsensical at the same time. So it really adds to that high strangeness feeling of it all. Like,
the
trapped in. Go ahead.
The one in Vegas is the Omega Mart, so it's like a grocery store.
Yes.
And then they also looks like they call it area. It says Explore Meow Wolf Area 15. So you're playing on the whole Area 51 mythology out there too.
Yeah.
And that's around Vegas as well.
So one of the sections specifically that I really liked in the Meow Wolf thing was like off and to the side, you've gone through the grandfather's closet or something like that, and it's full of VHS tapes and old VCRs and TVs in there, which made it, I don't know, it gave it such a time setting.
I have a room like that.
Do you? It was awesome.
He does. I can vouch for that, actually.
But you walk
old wrestling videos from 1994 in there.
Yes.
Wrestling music and some movies and a bunch of old TVs. Yeah. Old computer equipment.
That's kind of perfect to me. It was awesome to have that, like, pseudo analog where things are starting to come together into more digital. But you pass through this and you're in sort of what I would call like a tourist version of the inside of the TARDIS or something like that. And there's different doors, and each door is labeled for a different environment or place that you could go to. And there are travel brochures on top of, the console control panel. But, I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I know I have read reports of people like encountering space brothers and like, okay, well, if you go through this place, you're going to have like a Timothy Leary type experience with machine elves. But over here is the space beach. And over here is the, fascinating stuff. And I just think if you've never had a high strangeness experience, but you want to have an idea of what it might be like go through one of these exhibits. You can, get that vibe, enjoy it. And then if you don't like it, you can go through the exit door and be outside in the real world. So it's very safe to explore. But yeah, so, taking all of New Mexico with all of this together, it's like, man, this is a strange place. Beautiful place, great people, but it's a strange place.
Yeah.
Did you stop over in Truth or Consequences or go to the Jornado del Muerto? Did you do any of that?
We did not. I wish we had. It was just a matter of time that we couldn't make it over there.
Yeah, I agree. I went there in 2017 to Roswell, and did a road trip. We drove across country, and that was for the 70th anniversary of whatever happened at Roswell.
Right.
And that was Rob, who was the co-host and producer of Conspiranormal at the time. We went out there, and it was like Guy Malone, his conference that he was doing, which is all part of the bigger conference or part of the bigger events that were going on at that time. And we went to. Did you go to the International UFO Museum?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really fun piece of Americana. Especially great when the weekend that we were there, when everybody's there. Peter was actually there as well. Seriah, he was
Peter Robbins
in Roswell. Yeah, well, he's nice. He's organized the conference. He used to work with him, helping him organize the conference and stuff. But so it was just a really cool time. But yeah, every place that you go to in Roswell is just like UFO themed. I mean, the town has just made their name on this. It's like the biggest thing that they have. Well, they're also famous for it being the retirement community capital of New Mexico.
Really?
And also being like there's like a lot of these dairy farms and cattle farms all over the place. So this was in July that we were there, beginning of July. And it's like 100 degrees or over 100 degrees. And the flies were just incredible.
Okay.
It was like the land of flies. We were just covered in them. And but that's because of like all the cattle and all the that's just going to attract flies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like I was telling you about the Pat Garrett stuff, that was something I didn't know. And then also another thing I didn't know, there's actually, when you get kind of off the beaten path, like everybody was down like around like the town square, but there's a little building. This was on like a Saturday that we were there, so nobody was around. They were all down having fun at the festival. But there's a monument, a plaque with an actual one of his rockets to Robert Goddard, who was like the original rocket pioneer in the United States. And he had, that's where he was based out of. He would go out in the desert and he would shoot the rockets off back in like the 20s and 30s. So it was also just known for that. And I mean, Roswell in and of itself, I mean, just like the history there of that kind of activity, it's like you start to see like, yeah, there probably was something that happened there that was later kind of covered up. I don't think it was necessarily alien in nature,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But something did happen. And I mean, this just the town has really embraced that. Mm-hmm. But you could tell that it's like, it's kind of a gimmick and it's kind of wearing a little thin. Even when we were there, it was like, okay, how many chainsaw alien statues am I going to see?
Yes.
That's where we were. The Motel 6 had a lot of them sitting out there. And
chainsaw alien?
Yeah, well, they're alien statues made with a chainsaw.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking there were statues of aliens with chainsaws.
I mean, there could have been that too. There might as well have been.
Which would have been awesome too. If you go to the McDonald's, I'm surprised they don't have that, because there are aliens all over the McDonald's there that are silver.
Yeah, that's the first place I had Whataburger. Was in Roswell, New Mexico.
So
which now we have one here. It opened up in my area. So
nice. So I sent you all a picture in the chat. Obviously, I'm sorry to the listeners that can't see it, but from the Meow Wolf, there was a shirt for the Society of Peripheral Studies.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like I wish I had thought of that name myself. That would be my publishing company.
Yeah.
One other thing, and I sent this to our friend Taylor already, there were divination decks for sale in the shop that were done with neon geometric shapes. And I was like, if these people have not seen Taylor's deck, his tarot deck, I would be shocked. That or they're, they've tuned into the same stuff.
It happens.
Oh, and I meant to say or add this to when Adam was talking about it wearing a little thin in Roswell. The lampposts have.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Yeah. Even the lampposts have eyes on them. That basically the globe section looks like a gray head with two little black silhouettes representing the eyes.
Of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you can definitely, like, once you go there, I mean, we all know places like this, right? I mean, there's always these tourist towns. I mean, like, you think of something like Branson, it's just based off of one thing, one gimmick, someplace like Gatlinburg or even Gettysburg is kind of like the same way. Like, they're all kind of like this. And Roswell is trying to be that for the UFO community. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you could tell that like in the late 80s, early 90s, once that like the whole big Roswell story, quote unquote, broke, they just went for it with all the alien stuff.
Oh, you don't blame them at all.
No,
like,
not
of
at
course.
Yeah.
When you're a rural community and you got a chamber of commerce and you're like, how do we make sure people are employed and have good jobs? Like, yeah. But it was amazing. The Chamber of Commerce even has aliens painted on the side of it.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, but it's cool. One of the things that we did, because we went to a vape shop and like Rob was trying to find some stuff for his vape, and so we got off the like main drag, right? So we had this other little part of Roswell that didn't look as good. And we get to this vape store and we're just talking to these local people there, and they're just like, well, we don't care. We, whatever. It's just, it's just silly. you know, like they have to live there, and you know,
Right,
you don't.
right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't. The parade is well worth seeing too. Like I think you went just recently, and they do something every year. But that was a big deal because it was, the 70th and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, I would like to be there for something like that on one of the anniversaries. And they also take tours out to the Trinity test site once a year on its anniversary. Yeah. And, once Jacques and Paulo started talking about that quite a bit, it's like, okay, interesting. And then did y'all go to White Sands, Adam, to the national park?
No, we didn't. We didn't get that far. I was there again in the next year coming back from California, and I spent a lot of time in Albuquerque then. I wish I had gone to Santa Fe, but I did go to the Museum of Nuclear Science, if that is any bearing on the conversation. Yeah, that's in Albuquerque.
So the reason I bring this up, and this was another sort of like, don't know if people are aware that they're doing this or not, but the national park is basically the southern end of the test range. And the Trinity site, of course, is within the test range.
You talking about the Carlsbad Caverns?
Oh, no, of the White Sands National
White Sands, okay.
And the White Sands, missile test range. This is getting extra weird, but in the national park, people are out there having barbecues, they're laughing, they've got sleds to go down the sides of the giant sand dunes. I forget what the sand is made of up out there, but it stays cool in the summertime even. And it looks like an alien terrain, but what it made me think of, when we talk about nuclear tests harming the structure of reality or making holes in it or whatever, I started like, if that causes that, how do you fix it? Do you put a bunch of happy people around that place that are enjoying themselves and engrossed in the moment to try and sort of like patch the hole you've created?
I see what you're saying.
Just a thought. Yeah. I'm like, it almost, I don't know if it was intentional, but probably not, but it could be.
Yeah, I'm looking at some pictures. I didn't know it was an actual national park. I thought it was actually just the missile range.
Just the test range?
The base, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's all that, this is really Serfiel's wheelhouse, but the reason I jokingly mentioned the Giordano del Muerto and the Truth and Consequences, if you're familiar with all the James Shelby Downard stuff, that's all that stuff, Trinity site, Giordano del Muerto, Truth and Consequences, New Mexico, that all comes up in all the Downard, all his mythology, if you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Yeah. A little bit.
And I think that like Vallee, I haven't read the book, but I mean, I've been told some things about it, that like the Trinity book, I think a lot of that's coming from the James Shelby Downard, what did he say? The manipulating primordial matter or whatever.
Yeah.
That whole concept. And that's been beaten to a pulp too by like a lot of Christian evangelical crowd are really hopped on to that, all the Jack Parsons stuff, which that doesn't have anything to do with New Mexico, but it's all tied in with all that kind of like 33rd degree parallel mythology. Which that's where the Trinity side is, it's close to 33rd degree.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure some of the rockets they tested out there, Parsons had a hand in designing at some point or contributed to. So
yeah, he probably did. I mean, that's probably that's probably a good point. I'm sure JPL was probably out there. But I want to say that wherever they were doing the Babylon working I think that was out in Death Valley or somewhere close there. I think that was California.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. But, to your point about working with primordial matter and things, that was kind of where I was coming from with they've made this place into a national park, and there are places all over for cookouts, and people are out there with their kids and their grandkids playing. And you're like, they tested a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
10 minutes that direction.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it's not that far from there. I know they only open it like just you said, like it's once a year. I don't know whether that's because of the radiation or what.
I don't know. There's a marker out there, and you can when they take you out there, you can go to the marker where the platform was, where it was detonated.
Yeah.
But and I say 10 minutes, it's probably more like 30 minutes, but still, it's not that far away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there's that little part of me that's like, was this intentional to make this a fun place after you've done some things that, may not have been good, I guess. or had it effect and you're trying to fix it. Yeah.
Even if it's not intentional, I mean, it's still probably pretty good for the psyche of the environment.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And as far as Downard goes, I mean, anyone can listen to the latest season of
Pennyroyal.
Yes, Pennyroyal.
Yeah.
And man, are those long episodes.
Yeah, they talk about Downard a lot, which I'll give a shout out to my co-host. I
lost you there, Adam.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll give a big shout out to my co-host. He's a big part of this last season. So
yeah, Surfiel.
Awesome.
Yeah, I gotta have Nathan back once the season's actually finished. I'm not sure if it's done yet.
I think it is finished now.
Okay, I thought so because I hadn't seen any new episodes pop up. There was just no clarity that was the last episode.
Yeah, see, I thought the episode before that was the last episode, and then he put the other one out.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
So it was.
What did you think of it?
I enjoyed it. It was structured very differently than the first season.
Yeah.
Like I said, the episodes were really long in some cases. I think one of them was like 2.5 hours long or something.
Yeah, the one about it was kind of supposed to be about UFOs, but it went a lot of different places. I think that was about almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
That one.
And I think that, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but it seemed like every episode just kind of wandered around. And I saw some people saying they were getting lost, and I'm like, no, I got lost a couple of times.
Yeah.
There was just so much information and presented so quickly.
There's a lot, and I don't know if you've met Nathan. I know you've talked to him, but
yeah, I haven't met him.
He's a very frenetic kind of guy. He's talking about a lot of different things that he's into, and he's super obsessed with all this material.
Yeah. Well, it's a great listen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, I want to have him back on to talk about it now that it's done.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of there's a lot of these interviews that he did. I know that Surfiel told me it's like they talked about a lot of different things, which was good because then Nathan could split that. He split several of the interviews up into a lot of the different episodes.
Oh yeah. So,
and
I think there's some things that are just nonsense in there, not on Nathan's part, but like that people are just like it's not. How can I explain? Like sort of disinfo type stuff,
Yeah, it could very well be. Mm-hmm. You never know.
Just like the Hellier stuff, wasn't like it seemed like it was misleading.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They were contacted by not who they said they, think they were contacted by or whatever. There were a few points where I'm going, I think this is nonsense. Or, I think you're being misled on this part, but, I don't know for sure.
Oh, I mean, I think Alan Greenfield had a lot to do with it there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Seriah. Let's say that. I mean, I think that I'm not going to sit here and say that it's like a hoax, but I think that there definitely was. They wanted it to be like a magical ritual in and of itself. And, Greenfield, he kind of comes from that kind of Jim Moseley type of school, where if you hoax something, then real events will start to happen, like the kind of the prime the pump kind of idea.
Yeah.
And then I've had on my own show, I've had Greenfield say, well, there's no such thing as hoaxes. Right, so he comes from that. That's where he's coming from with that, is that anything that you do to, if you might make something up or you might make something occur, then something real is going to come from that. It's like a magic. It's a magical working in and of itself.
Yes.
So it's an interesting concept. And I mean, Moseley would do that. He would call fake reports in to the police or to a radio station. And then all of a sudden people in that area would actually start seeing things.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, is there a mass hysteria involved, or is there more going on there.
Well, you can only call it mass hysteria if they found out about his reports before they reported it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, he just said that he would call in these events in, and then, just see what happened from there. Kind of just sit back and be like an agent of chaos, and then sit back and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that he would do.
One of my anthropology professors and I would sort of muse around the idea of Bigfoot and things like that, and playing with, obviously this is unethical, we never did it, but what if we went to one of these small towns and one of us ran across the road in a Sasquatch costume, and then just observe what showed up in the newspaper locally over the next couple of days, and see if people were calling the police department and saying, hey, we saw something strange or whatever. Documenting all that.
Didn't someone do that and get shot?
I'm sure that's happened to a couple of people.
Yeah, so that was one of our discouragements from it. Is I actually met a firefighter in the area that he had done that, and they had fun the first 2 times. The third time, someone chased them with a shotgun, and it was like, "Oh, we didn't do that again." They had a Chewbacca costume, I believe.
Oh no. Because you're in the South, and people have guns here, and in rural in rural areas, people have guns. Not a real smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm going to prove it once and for all.
So
exactly.
Blam!
I was looking to find that article, and when I typed in "guy dressed as Bigfoot," the autofill wants the next word to be squishmallow.
Oh my God. Okay.
So now I got to click on squishmallow.
Yep.
Squishmallow 8-inch Benny and Bryna Bigfoot combo. What the hell is this? Got to be a toy.
Oh. All right. Well, no, I don't think you need to go any further with that, sir.
Yep. It's 2 little 8-inch toys for $70 at Walmart.
Oh. We're all in the wrong business, apparently. So let's see if I can find that article of the guy shot. Well, while you're looking for the article, this is really for when you get to do your roundtable with Walter Bosley and Barbara and Taylor. But there was a magic shop in downtown Roswell named Hekete's Cavern.
Nice.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, I've been hearing about her a lot lately. And then like, oh, this is right here in the middle of downtown on Main Street. And there's they have a mannequin dressed up as her with things around her in the storefront window and everything. So just keep that in your back burner.
That's the other thing too, is all the UFO stuff, you're going to get all the new age stuff.
Yeah.
And I think Santa Fe is kind of a new age little capital, as I understand it too.
Oh, it totally is. Yeah. So anyway, don't want to get us too far off topic, back to where we were, but I was like, oh, I should point that out before I forget.
So Montana man killed during Bigfoot hoax. A Montana man dressed in a Bigfoot costume in an apparent attempt to provoke reports of sightings of the mythical creature was killed when he was struck by 2 cars on the highway.
Darwin Awards by 2 cars.
He was standing in the right-hand lane of U.S. Highway 93 Sunday night when he was struck by a car. The Montana Highway Patrol said a second car then hit him as he lay in the road.
Wow.
Smart.
That's horrible.
So that's what I was thinking of.
I would rather be shot. Just for the record. Oh my gosh.
Well, causing things to happen, that type of thing. We've talked about this before, people that go out and they do the Bigfoot hunting and all that. They're literally having a ritual.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Out there. Yeah. And of course things are going to start happening.
Yeah.
The expedition Bigfoot that's in Blue Ridge, Georgia, which I've gone a couple of times there, they see Bigfoot all the time. And I'd really love to know if which came first.
Yeah.
Because, it seems like you've built this big, like Brenner has said many times, if you build, it's almost like they've built a shrine to Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting.
Bigfoot's crossing the road left and right in Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Yeah. That reminds me a lot of like Jeff Ritzman's theories too on like making strange things happen as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's totally original.
Well, that's one of the things that you see in some of even like the famous haunting case. I mean, Enfield Poltergeist is a perfect example of that, because sometimes the girls would be forced to perform, and they would have performance anxiety. So they would actually they admitted to actually faking things, but once they did that, actual stuff really started to happen.
Yeah.
So you see that a lot. There seems to be a lot of intention in some of this.
So Montana man told police a hunter mistook him for Bigfoot and shot at him.
So he wasn't actually trying to be Bigfoot.
No.
He was just like wearing a ghillie suit or something.
Well, it says a Montana man was out shooting targets when he became a target himself, and it was because the man mistook him for Bigfoot. The 27-year-old from Helena told dispatchers on Monday that a day earlier he had been putting up targets on public lands outside the city when bullets started flying toward him. Lewis and Clark County Sheriff Leo Dutton said in a phone interview with McClatchy. The man said one bullet hit 3 feet to his left on Sunday, and another whizzed right past him on the right. He explained that he ran into the trees for cover as more gunfire came his way. Eventually, he came back out to confront the man in a black Ford F-150 who shot at him. The guy said, "I thought you were Bigfoot. I don't target practice, but if I see something that looks like Bigfoot, I just shoot at it."
Oh my gosh.
That's a really good plan.
Yeah.
Is there a picture of the guy that was getting shot at? Because that's a horrible idea.
Nope, I'm not. It doesn't say like what he was dressed in or anything, but I wouldn't think he was in a ghillie suit if he was just doing target practice.
Right.
So here's the other thing, just based off the shooter's statement too, it sounds like this is not the first time he's done that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I thought you were Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bag one of those.
So I had converted off VHS this old PBS show, something like Searching for the Chinese Wild Man or something like that. And I put it up for patrons because it doesn't look like it's available anywhere. And when I was flipping through it, I stopped on one part, and here's this tall white guy, blonde white guy, talking about how they're camping on one of the with his guides along one of the rivers in China. And this is from the 1980s. And he said they had all stripped down to like their underwear and made camp and stuff and were sleeping there. And the next day there were all these Yeti reports. And apparently the Yeti was him.
Oh my gosh.
Because the Chinese peasants had never seen a tall, hairy white man before.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, isn't that something that like somebody was talking about this? Maybe I heard it on your show, but just like the idea that just about anything big and hairy in that culture could be the Yeti.
Sure. I don't think it was on my show, but yeah.
But they were talking, I mean, they found like, the hair was examined and it was like from a bear.
That was recently, yeah.
But Yeti is like it's almost a catch-all phrase for just like big mysterious creature. It's not necessarily concrete as we think of it as.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
We don't the mythological Yeti too. Like aren't its feet backwards and some other things like that?
I've heard that. Yeah.
So you can see how like anything doesn't quite make sense. You might call that if you were grew up in that culture.
And if you're living in a if you're a peasant in China in the 1980s, you've never seen a tall, white, hairy man.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's a Yeti sleeping by the river.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was all excited because there was a Yeti sighting, and then he's like, oh, that was me.
It was me.
And I think in that one too, they did find some hair that they couldn't identify when they did tests on it. But I didn't rewatch the whole thing. I just thought people would find it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
you said this was on an old VHS tape?
Yeah, it was an old VHS thing I taped off PBS. I have a bunch of stuff like that I'm making available to patrons.
Yeah.
Just weird stuff I have on VHS from different shows here and there. And none of this stuff is easily available. Some of it's on YouTube, so I usually check first to make sure it's not something that I'm doing that's already out there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This one, there's a version of it on YouTube, but it's completely different, but it's the same guys. Like it's like the UK version kind of like took bits of it and then added other stuff into it. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit and watch both of these, but it's like it's some of the same footage, but then other completely different stuff like reenactments and stuff. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. I need to watch it. I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm the guy that, like, you know, if the old In Search Of shows come on, I'll just like sit there and like just let them play over and over.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about the things about places and stuff, and I found this on Quora. I don't remember how it came up. But the guy's name was Reese Mack, and I was going to write him, and then Quora took it away, and I was like, why did you make that go away? But I at least copied it before it did. And I realized reading this is probably enough. So the question someone had asked, what are myths about the secrets of nature? And this guy says, geologically, Australia is the oldest continent on the planet. It's truly ancient, and Australian Aborigines have inhabited it in isolation for upwards of 65,000 years. To add context, that predates the rise of civilization by an incredible 60,000 years. So Australia is huge and empty and old. It is, in fact, the single oldest thing on the planet. It was already ancient before the Himalayas were thrust out of the Earth's mantle, and indigenous people of Australia are the oldest surviving culture by a factor of tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of years. There are areas of this country you can literally feel the age of the continent rise up out of the ground and hit you in the chest. It's real and it's palpable to anyone who has approached Urala or Kata Juta, I think that's how it's spelled, or walked along the Finke River, or any of the various inland ranges that you can tell that are that tell you that I had the words in the wrong order. Inland ranges can tell you. But there are other more remote locations that very few Westerners have ever seen that are older and even more potent. I left home at 9, and I've spent much of my life in the most remote regions of Australia. I have occasionally found myself alone in the bush and unexpectedly entered an area that literally vibrates with energy. Places of power so raw and tangible that you can't truly understand it unless you've experienced it, both malevolent and benevolent. Some of them, places of peace and tranquility that wash over you like a slow dream. Others, oppressive and sinister. You'll be walking alone in the bush, hundreds of miles from anywhere when you enter a clearing or approach a bend in a river. It might be a horseshoe valley or the heart of a forest, and with one step you pass from what was a fine and unremarkable day into something dark and threatening. You will stop dead in your tracks, unable to move. The hairs on the back of your neck and arms will stand up, goosebumps will form all over your body, and it will suddenly grow very quiet. You will be engulfed by such an incredible, ancient, primal, and malicious force that you will literally hold your breath and begin backing up, completely cognizant of the fact that as you do, so whatever invisible presence is out there, it's aware of you and watching you and absolutely means to harm you. I've experienced it 5 or 6 times in my life, and I've walked miles out of my way to bypass those areas when I've stumbled across them. With humility, being a 7th or 8th generation Australian raised in the bush as my father was, and his father before him, I'm attuned to nature and this country in a way most tourists simply aren't, and I can promise you that more than one of the disappearances in the Australian bush can be attributed to them unknowingly encroaching upon one of these malevolent places. I know for a fact it's an experience other Australians have had, yet I have never seen it discussed in a public forum. I have also had similar, though not identical, experiences in wilderness areas of both the United States and Europe. So back to the question, what are the myths and secrets about the secrets of nature? In Australia, it's the dreaming. Aboriginals have been handing their stories down through countless generations for eons, and I can attest that as a white man who was born and raised in the Australian bush, only a fool pays no attention to them. Quickens, bunny yips, yowies, bobby, mangali, wati, katjura. It doesn't matter what you call them. There are things out there in the most remote regions of the Australian outback that defy Western comprehension. I poop you not. Some of my fellow Australians will laugh at me, but Bushmen won't. Neither will the Aborigines.
Sounds a little bit like the Oz effect.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What they're experiencing.
The Oz effect in Australia.
Chuckle.
I love the cosmology from some of the different Aboriginal tribes that I'm aware of, especially when you have accounts of things like megalania still being around, these gigantic lizards that are like 20 or 30 feet long. It sounds like portals or belief or magic. I don't know, but it fascinates me. I have to assume a lot of those things aren't exactly flesh and blood, particularly when you have like their giant forest fires that they've had and things like that. Like, I don't know what the habitat would be like. So it just makes it that much, more magical to me, I guess.
You also get some of the weirdest UFO stories out of Australia, too.
I'm not familiar with many UFO stories out of Australia. Seriah, is there any you can think of off the top of your head?
Well, there's the one we covered just the other week when we had Travis on talking about weird mists. One of those stories was from Australia.
Well, I've listened to that one like 3 or 4 times.
The one where the UFO chased the car and stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Have you listened to Conspiranormal's interview with W.T. Watson? So you got more W.T. Watson this week than you knew you thought you had.
Oh, I should go check that out.
I did not.
Oh my gosh, the lady getting out of her car, wiping her windshield off and throwing the rag down that sets on fire suddenly. It's just like...
Well, when Seriah was reading that, I was thinking about the Aborigines. They have the concept called Dreamtime, or it's also called the dreaming. And the description of it here on Wikipedia says the dreaming is used to represent Aboriginal concepts of every wind, during which the land was inhabited by ancestral figures, often of heroic proportions or with supernatural abilities. These figures were often distinct from gods, as they did not control the material world and were not worshipped but only revered. The concept of the dream time has subsequently become widely adopted beyond its original Australian context and is now part of global popular culture. So that sounds a little bit like fairy lore. It sounds a little bit like the jinn.
It also sounds a little bit like the Golden Age concept of cycles.
Yeah, right.
It does. The thing that always fascinates me about the Aboriginals, too, is their language doesn't have a lot of grammatical structure. And it also kind of plays into like their concepts of time being different, because it's very hard for us to understand because the language is, I don't want to say abstract because that's misleading in saying it's not complicated or smart or intelligent, but it's so different.
Yeah.
They don't even, there are different things too where like they don't have a term for left or right, but they spent their whole lives being very acquainted with a language that uses cardinal directions.
Right.
So, if you were going to hang a picture, they would say, oh, that needs to go a little bit more to the west, as opposed to the left or whatever. But you can arrange, if I'm remembering right from my linguistics days, which I only took one class in, so I'm no expert on this, the words in a sentence can be arranged in almost any order. Which just blew my mind, but it gives you the ability to talk about concepts in a much more abstract and flexible way than English might or Latin-based languages.
I will say this: judging by social media, there's a lot of people who speak English who do not have any kind of grammatical structure either. However, you don't know what they're talking about usually.
Yes.
There are so many times I go through social media and I'm like, is there just something wrong with my brain? Like, why am I not understanding what this person's saying? And then I move on to something else and go, no, I understand that one. Let me go back to the. Nope, it's them. It's not me. All right.
At least you know it's not you.
Did I just have a stroke? Hang on. This is not processing.
So what we're saying here is the Aboriginal culture is actually a lot more advanced than 21st century social media users.
Well, that's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think our culture is necessarily advancing very well.
Right. So-called advance.
Right. Well, go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was going to say we have better technology, but less empathy.
Yeah. In anthropology, we would talk about, you can't judge cultures based on your culture because the back in the day, it was based on what we consider technology or something like that. And you ended up with a lot of imperialism and, the noble savage concept and things like all this stuff is really insulting and inappropriate and incorrect when, they may not have technology the way that, some other culture might, but socially and critically and all these other things could be incredibly advanced.
Yeah.
They just didn't need the technology. So
right.
they never had a need to develop it,
Absolutely. And they're more in touch with things. I mean, there's nothing wrong with technology, our technology. It's that we use it as a substitute.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Exactly. A social media connection is not the same as an in-person connection.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's great. We can, the three of us can be in three parts of the country right now and have a conversation, which is fantastic.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing bad about that, really.
Right.
But it's always good to see people and connect with them in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing with social media and everybody's talked about this, but it still bothers me, is that it's made our attention span shorter because we reduce things down to smaller and smaller bites of information to consume. But because of that, we don't look deeper on anything. Or, if we do, it's a lot of times, I did my own research. You read somebody's Facebook post.
Yeah.
That's not doing research.
And
there's a lot of that right now.
Yeah,
there is.
Because Facebook and stuff like this, I mean, it creates an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it doesn't have to be just one post, but they're also only seeing news articles that agree with them.
Yeah,
agree with that preset idea.
Yeah, well, you've heard me call the Facebook algorithm the anti-life equation.
It gives you what you want to see, gives you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Yes. So
YouTube is probably the best at that, honestly.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. You should see the stuff it recommends to me. I mean, it's like all crack for me, but it's stuff I know is not accurate or right.
Right.
So the anti-life equation came from Jack Kirby. That was he and Stan Lee created most of the Marvel universe back in the day. But he did a side project where he re-envisioned the archetypal gods and things like that. And the great evil of the universe was looking for the anti-life equation. And he knew it was trapped inside of a person's head. But basically, the equation was something that would make intelligent people willingly submit themselves to and happily to his will if he had possession of it. And, you're like, oh, we have these algorithms that shape people's views and reinforce certain biases and, exist to sort of agitate them a certain way. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
Yep, totally. And I mean, in the mainstream media, and you don't have to be on one side or the other. Both sides of the political spectrum have their own mainstream media that is still only going to feed you an echo chamber.
Yes, exactly.
So
exactly.
Let's look at this other article I saved. This one's from ways back that I just wanted to comment on. In a world first, researchers record the brainwaves of a dying patient. And one of the things they found is that the brain doesn't slow down like they expected it to.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of the 87-year-old man, the researchers saw brainwaves of all different types, but the gamma waves were the most dominant among them. The study's researchers speculate that these waves are possibly associated with memory flashback during the last moments of life. And they've seen this in, I think, rats as well. But, of course, they're still looking at it as a materialistic thing. So it's like, well, your brain is replaying some of the loveliest memories of your life as it takes away your life force. But this does not explain, this is what they're, using this type of thing to explain a near-death experience. But they're not taking into account the out-of-body state where the person can describe things in detail after they've died. So when people are giving details of things they shouldn't be able to perceive and doing it accurately, I mean, it's enough that numerous doctors have been like, nope, I can't explain this, like other than the fact that they were out of their body. That rush may be a transition period of some sorts, but it becomes all speculation, but that speculation gets led into as if this is, oh no, now we understand it better.
Right.
Rather than looking at it as this could just be another, it's another piece. It's interesting, but it doesn't explain what happens when we die.
Exactly. Your life playing before your eyes is also sort of an odd mechanism, I suppose. Like there are plenty of ways for endorphins to be released into your body and make you feel comforted and not whatever.
Right.
If that's what we assume that this function is trying to do, if we're just approaching it from a materialist perspective, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying this is evidence of anything else either, but it is an odd thing to have happen to help you die if that's just it.
Yes. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any. I mean, most things are survival mechanisms, like most basic functions are survival mechanisms. This is not a survival mechanism because you're dying.
Yeah. Like you could just as well be having, wild hallucinations or something like that are comforting.
Yeah. Or really calm, sort of calming things that make you kind of just drift off.
Yeah.
But instead, you're seeing this rush of like massive amounts of activity. So maybe what we're seeing is our conscious selves disconnecting from the brain, which then also makes you wonder, like, what happens when someone dies because their brain is destroyed?
Yeah.
Does that create a different type of transition? Are those why we have ghosts? Because they didn't have that transition?
Right. It's a good question. Obviously we don't know.
Yeah.
But I always like the idea that consciousness is around you. It just didn't, is translated through the brain. So
yeah. Oh yeah. The idea that the brain is just an interpreter of reality.
Yeah. It's a receiver going both ways, relaying information.
Yes.
Just the mechanism.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the computer. It's not the user.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take for like science to look outside that paradigm, that sort of materialistic view of things. Because I'm sure there's stuff they could be studying if they weren't assuming that everything was material.
I hope we get a little bit more progress there. There are some days I'm optimistic about, like when Rice just had their event with the Archives of the Impossible and things like that. I'm like, okay, maybe that's a good sign. But
which event was this?
We're not there. At Rice University, the thing that Dr. Kreipel organized, where they had all the speakers come in.
Yeah, David Metcalf was part of that, and he talked a lot about it in our episode we did with him.
Yeah, David was there. Greg Bishop was there. Yep. Jacques was there. I mean, they had some really cool folks, and this is Rice University. But I almost put all of this on Dr. Kreipel's shoulders for pulling off.
And that reminds me, there was let me see if I can find it. I know I have it saved here somewhere. There it is. So there was some UFO conference. And George Norrie was there, Whitley Strieber, Jacques Vallee, and a bunch of other people. I don't know if we talked about this. And this guy, Sam Kastenbaum, was tweeting from there. And I happened to catch some of the tweets, and there were people who, believed in the flat earth. And I mean, it was all over the place. It wasn't just
everybody. UFO. Yeah.
And he writes, it's a sprawling event with multiple lecture rooms running at once. Coast to coast, George Norrie is here, communion author Whitley Strieber. UFO enthusiast Jacques Vallee. Yeah.
He's just an enthusiast.
Yeah, he's just an enthusiast. He's not an astrophysicist or a computer programmer. He's just a UFO enthusiast.
Right. Well, that might have just been since he is his main life as all those other things. Mm-hmm. That's probably a true statement as far as the UFO. Like, he doesn't make his money from the UFO stuff. But he probably gets some royalties from his books, but like that's not the way he makes his.
But if
he makes his money,
if there was anyone to call a UFO expert,
it would be him.
Yeah.
But I mean, but he might have actually approved of that. Just call me an enthusiast.
I can see that. I would say that if you're going to describe somebody as an enthusiast, that's probably me.
Well,
I have no qualifications.
For someone,
same here. Yeah.
For someone of Jacques' stature, I would say that's dismissive.
Yeah, it seems like that to me, and I wonder. So, who was the guy that was tweeting out? I'm not familiar with him.
I think he wrote for the New York Post or something like that.
That's right. Because you had shared some of this in the Slack. I remember this now. And I remember thinking that I went and looked up some of his other work, and I'm like, okay, he does his research, but I even kind of thought like maybe he just wasn't as aware of who Jacques was when he tweeted that. But I somewhat doubt that, though. When I was looking at some of the other articles he had written, he was very thorough.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently, he works for the New York Times, not the New York Post. Because I just looked up his Twitter. His latest tweet says, "On the rise of an end times church and its celebrity pastor."
Oh, wow.
So maybe he does some of the... says he writes about religion for the New York Times and Washington Post. But that doesn't really fit in with the UFO thing, but I guess, there was other stuff going on there, too.
Right.
Interesting. But it's like that just bugged the hell out of me to call Jacques an enthusiast.
Yeah. I am an enthusiast. I barely qualify as an enthusiast. If I were going to give Jacques titles outside of his expertise, I would be like Grandmaster of all cool things or something like that,
But I mean, it's a UFO convention. You could have called him an astrophysicist because he is.
Yeah.
Is he an astronomer? Now I'm forgetting which one he is. Either of you remember what? Because I know he was an astronomer when he started. Neither of you know, or I've lost both of you. One of the two.
You haven't lost us. I'm not sure. I was trying to think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure either. I thought he was always more of a. I think that came later. All that stuff in Silicon Valley.
Okay, so he is an internet pioneer, computer scientist, venture capitalist, author, ufologist, and astronomer. So not an astrophysicist, but an astronomer. Because remember, in his early career, he wanted to become an astronomer to look for UFOs, and then found them in the telescopes recordings and stuff. They have these anomalous things, and he found out they would destroy the records.
Wow.
And he's like, why are you destroying the records? We don't know what these things are. And they're like, right. And we're not going to be the ones, being in France, he's like, we're not going to be the ones to come out and say we captured something unknown on our telescopes until someone like the United States does, because otherwise we're going to get ridiculed.
Which, fair point. That was probably a true statement or observation.
Yeah,
but they should have been destroying them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, or just, you can't just say you captured something unknown. I mean, I think that's where Jacques got kind of disillusioned with that type of stuff. I haven't read his autobiography in a while, so I don't remember exactly how that played out, but I know he had a sighting earlier in his life with like the whole town saw this UFO over their town.
Huh. I vaguely remember that now, but I have to go back and look.
So they were, and obviously he's had an interesting career with it, regardless of the Trinity book, which I haven't read, so I can't comment too much on. And neither of you have read that yet, have you?
No, I've not read it, but from what it seems like it's, like I said before, it seems like it's very much the James Shelby Downard type of stuff.
I'm not super familiar with James Shelby Downard, but I'm familiar with the ideas out of there. And I've got the book. I've read it in parts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, but, it's the whole Jack
Adam's
Parsons
right.
thing about making like a moon child and all that stuff is what it's kind of alluding to.
Right.
So as I understand it, that's what the book is about.
One of the other articles I saved, Havana Syndrome believed to be caused by pulsed electromagnetic energy. This is from Strieber's site. 2 new reports from the U.S. intelligence community have been released regarding the debilitating condition referred to as Havana Syndrome, including one from a joint research with the intelligence community and a separate analysis from the CIA. So
interesting.
This, what does it say here? This finding does not call into question the fact that our officers are reporting real experiences and are suffering real symptoms, nor does it explain every report. Right. I think they had checked a whole bunch of different things that seemed like they had similarities to Havana Syndrome, and said some of them could be environmental or medical conditions and stuff like that. But they kind of chucked them all together rather than isolating out like the specific things that seemed like attacks. And by doing so, they kind of made it seem like, oh, well, most of this stuff is explainable. Kind of like muddying the waters and then, kind of using that to explain it away.
Exactly. Yeah.
Many individuals suffering from Havana Syndrome were dissatisfied with the report, feeling that their cases had been dismissed by the findings.
Mm-hmm.
The Havana Syndrome stuff is... that's made 60 Minutes, y'all.
Yeah. And
so they're starting to take that stuff seriously. Although it's probably all that stuff's probably been around for a long, long time.
Oh, certainly. And it seems like they were, but this is the thing. Like, they're taking it seriously, but they're also seeming to sort of like, oh yeah, we'll look at it. It's really nothing. But something happened to him, but don't worry about it.
Well, they're saying that it was our enemies that did it. There's probably a little bit of that deflection there, just like of us not saying that we probably had this stuff way before they did.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So I came across some guy. This is so reputable, y'all. This is the most accredited answer I can give on anything that I can find all kinds of sources for. There's a guy on TikTok. But he was recounting some stuff about Havana Syndrome, and I guess I can't remember how he used the term, but something like energy weapons being in play in East and West Germany during the Cold War, because they were having people come down with similar symptoms, and like how they tried to address it. And one of the things that came out of that was one of the little gigahertz generators that you could carry in your pocket that like resonate. Oh, it's a resonator, I guess is what they call it. That puts out like a 7.65 frequency to counter the effects of these energy weapons. And who knows if any of that is true. It's a fascinating story, but I don't know. But shooting EMF waves at people is not hard to do.
Right. And I am sure every country that has the tech has been experimenting with different, and for all we know, it was our own government experimenting on people with this thing.
Yeah, it's something that can make you feel really, really weird.
Yeah.
Well, think of all the technology that Robert Guffey talks about in Camellia.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's a totally different thing. But yeah. So this stuff has been around for a while. It's just that it's coming out of the realm of conspiracy theory. And there was the guy back, I think it was, I don't remember when this was, maybe 2011 or 2012, that was like, he went up and shot up some government building in DC, and he had on his weapon, he had ELF written on it, which was like extra low frequency. Extra low frequency, And he was saying that he was one of these targeted individuals, and it's Yep. And now they're coming out all this time later and saying, "Oh well, this is something that our enemies are doing to us," or blah blah blah, whatever.
Of course.
Yeah, they were saying there was this woman that she worked in the Trump White House, and she said she was walking outside of the White House and started feeling really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like she was being targeted by one of these things. And of course the Havana Syndrome comes from that it was happening in Havana, Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're saying that the Cubans were doing it to or somebody was doing it to our embassy in Cuba.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, that seems like a fun place to stop.
Okay.
On this wander around the roads, we'll do a Patreon segment for people. And I thank you very much, Adam. You want to give people information?
Yeah, sure. Adam's saying, in case nobody knows me, nobody probably does by now since I've been gone for so long, but conspiranormal.com, you can find all Conspiranormals going back 10 years. I've been around longer than Seriah as far as like paranormal podcasting. Yeah. And we just did our 400th episode not that long ago. And,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And, of course, also Strange Realities Conference, like I said before, is coming up October 14th through the 16th. Tickets will be available soon. And you'll find out info pretty soon on strangerealitiesconference.com.
And if you really want to talk to Super Inframan, he lurks around our Discord here and there.
I lurk around the Discord. You can probably find me on Instagram. Jacques Vallee and I share the same qualification. We are UFO enthusiasts.
All right. Thank you both.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
I would like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons, because without you, this show would not be possible. I particularly want to give a special shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more. Leanne Sherry, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Stephen St. George, CJ, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Brendan William, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, land of the crazy and communicable, Chris Ernst, Craig Cicernos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, Diane B., Duffy Dowder, Edu Camahort, MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, James Lattimore, Joanna Rojas, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, Jim and Sophie, Mark Bowley, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Roger Gonzalez, Sam Sharon, Stone Wilderness Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, 36 Dingo, Thunderboy, Timothy Castaneda, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Trewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Stephen D., and Amber Hall. Thank you all so very much. Well, I hope you enjoyed that Wandering of the Road episode of Where'd the Road Go? We do a Patreon episode that focuses more on stuff we've watched and listened to recently that goes into the paranormal, fringe vein that we normally cover on the show. Not a full-out episode of like movie reviews and stuff, just kind of some meandering about, talking about some of the stuff. And that will be out later this week for Patreons. And if you want to become a Patreon, it's only $3 a month, and you get a ton of extra content all month long. Special little things I'll put up, as well as extra content from almost every show. Not quite every show, but almost every show. And you also get the show a week early. So you're getting quite a bit for just $3 a month, and it helps us out an immense amount. You can also buy merch from us. There's some really awesome shirt designs, and you can get them on mugs and tapestries and all kinds of things. If you go to wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the merch link, there's 2 designs from Timothy Renner, and there are 2 designs from the late Jeff Ritzman. All really awesome stuff, and I'm honored that those guys did that for us. So, yeah, go check it out. And I will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.